And hello YouTube, this is Thomas Judge, back once again with another installment of my ongoing YouTube series, Valiant Till the Last, in which I review the entirety of the Valiant comics universe since the 2012 reboot. And my initial intention was to do it one deluxe edition at a time, although now I'm doing the whole damn thing. No further ado, today we are looking at the Wrath of the Eternal Warrior Deluxe Edition. As promised in last week's video, this is the one that I've read since then, and this was your homework, so hopefully you read it too. This is set directly after the Book of Death, and I kind of guessed it went here, and having read it, it perfectly goes here. This is exactly when to read it. It's a direct follow-on from the Book of Death. Let's have a look at the deluxe edition first. We've got the standard cover, so you've got the spine, the tag at the top, and then the image, which I think is from issue 4. I think it's one of the variant covers. Usual nice clean spine there. No number because it's just collects the entire series of 14 issues in one. Standard back, picture, blurb, usual. Now, just as we get into the inside flaps, obviously we have the creator blurb at the back here. I am going to read out the blurb here just because it provides some useful context. But I will point this out. If you're sensitive about spoilers for what happens in the Book of Death, do not watch this video. All you need to know is this is what you read after the Book of Death. However, there's some quite fundamental changes and events that happen to Gilad, the Eternal Warrior, that sets up this series, and I don't want to ruin it for you, so consider that your spoiler warning. Okay, let's take the dust jacket off, and then I will read you the blurb on the front flap. So it says, "In the wake of the Book of Death, the Earth's immortal champion is dead, but his battle is far from over. Cast out of our world into a fearsome afterlife of pain and punishment, Gilad is determined to return to our world and resume his duty, but can even history's most formidable master of war forge ahead in an unearthly domain built to break the human spirit?" And then it's got some more stuff. But long story short, the important thing is that's where this starts. This starts after the end of Book of Death, where Gilad, the Eternal Warrior, the Immortal, appears not to be immortal. So we'll get into that in just a second. Anyway, Wrath of the Eternal Warrior, boom, nice embossed logo there. Standard embossed spine, looks fine if you want to have it raw on your shelf, which is, totally up to you. And nice clean back. Okay, let's dive into it. Usual end leaves. These are green in this case, which is a fine choice. Let's get into the issues collected. So this collects 3 trade paperbacks and a little bit of something else. So the first trade paperback it collects is the one which is Risen. That's issues 1 to 4. Obviously, it gives the individual issue subtitles there as well. The next trade paperback is Labyrinth, which is issues 5 to 10. So prologue issues and then 4 Labyrinth issues. And then it has Deal with the Devil, which is the final 4 issues from 11 to 14. And that is the entirety of the entire Wrath of the Eternal Warrior series. They only ever did 14 issues. You will notice it also collects Eternal Warrior Awakening, which is a one-shot that got released after issue 14. But I'll talk about that when we get to it in the book. Zoom in. Zoom in. Awesome. Right, so Risen, here we have it. We've got the 4 issues here. Those are the covers. And yeah, so obviously this story is set in kind of like this weird place where I want to say afterlife. It's a bit like the Dead Side, I guess, which is the Valiant Universe version of the afterlife. And it's really about what happens in between Gilad's resurrections, like where he goes, what he does, and so on. This dude, this demon dude, turns up quite a few times. I will point out, the way he's written it's fine, but basically it's a poor man's Gollum from Lord of the Rings, to be honest. But as long as you can get past that, it's absolutely fine. So long story short, what happens is when Gilad dies, he goes to heaven, and he sees like all these people, like this is a woman that he had a family with thousands of years ago. He's got his kids, he's got this like wonderful idyllic setting, and then he has to leave, fight through the underworld to get back to Earth and resurrect. It's a bit of a spoiler, but there's literally no way for me to talk about the comic without kind of providing that amount of context, which is an awesome idea. It works really well. You had your spoiler warning earlier, by the way. And the story is really cool. I was quite surprised how much I enjoyed this, because as you know, I'm a massive sort of fan of Valiant in general. However, I'm not into fantasy, and I'm not into sword and sorcery or witchcraft and that sort of stuff. This is why I'm essentially avoiding reading Shadow Man and that sort of stuff until right to the end of the reading order, just because I'm not looking forward to it. So that said, the fact that this is set in hell and has this whole thing going on worked out really well. It was really fun. It was really well put together. I really enjoyed it. And this first arc of 4 issues is just kind of setting the scene and providing all the context and detail for how Gilead's power of resurrection works, which frankly I really enjoyed and I thought was good fun. And for me to say that, given that I'm generally pitted against things about hell and the afterlife and that sort of like magic mystical stuff, is definitely saying something. So those were the first 4 issues, and then it ends on this like kind of crazy cliffhanger thing, and then that leads us into Labyrinth, which you can see these 6 issues here. Now, in the second trade paperback, Labyrinth, what happens here is we get introduced to a new character, an antagonist. Now, the antagonist here is... I'll get to it in a second. But it's someone called the Dying One. Yet another kind of classic Valiant name, isn't it? The Dying One, the Immortal Enemy, the Bleeding Monk, the Burning Monk, the Undead Monk. God, like everyone's a monk, aren't they, in Valiant? But anyway, so the Undying One is basically the bad guy. And interestingly, the Undying One is kind of typified by having mismatched eye colour. One is green, one is brown. The reason I point that out is I saw this and I was just like, why is this familiar? But it is familiar. And I was thinking about it and I was looking through my notes and I was like, all right, this character came up in Ninja K, which is something we read a while back. And in Ninja K, there's an arc there called the Coalition in the middle of the Ninja K Deluxe Edition. And that Coalition trade paperback or Coalition story arc was... It features someone called the Dying One, and they had this mismatched eye thing, and I'm like, oh, right. So I guess this is the first time you see this antagonist, and then I guess if I'd read this before I'd read Ninja K, I would have been like, oh, right, it is clever. I hadn't done that. Having said that, I mean, Ninja K was great to read anyway, but that's where this character essentially is, or where it comes from, or where it goes. So that was an interesting little thing about kind of the Valiant universe getting woven together a bit more. Anyway, this arc of Labyrinth is just really interesting. It's kind of like a realistic realistic, given it's the Valiant universe, kind of realistic kind of a depiction of what would happen about having someone with similar powers to Gilead and how they would view Gilead and how they would essentially pitch themselves as an antagonist to Gilead and what they would want to do to try to really unravel his powers or understand him. Basically, it's a good story. Randomly, it did remind me, it had a slightly Batmanish feel to it. If you've read some of Snyder's Batman, it had the same kind of like horror, kind of cyclic repetition kind of motifs in it. But anyway, I enjoyed it. I thought it was good. Really liked it. And then it ends with a cameo from Arik, Exo Manowar. So this is the first time we've really seen Exo Manowar in the Eternal Warrior comics. It doesn't really lock it into any particular time and place, chronologically speaking. And as long as you basically know Exo exists, then you can just read this at any time, basically. You don't have to read Exo Manowar first. Anyway, that takes us to Deal with the Devil, the third trade paperback. So this trade paperback is basically Spawn. If you've ever read Todd McFarlane's Spawn, it's really similar. It's about the different lords and kings of hell, and it's about their different kind of power plays and the hierarchy of hell and how things work and like different factions in hell and stuff. Again, not the sort of thing that I'm into at all. But I've got to say, I read it, and at one point, I even like put down. It wasn't this page; it was a different page. I actually put the comic down, and I just said to myself, just to an empty room, I just said, "God damn, this is a good comic." Which is a rare thing from me, especially for something that involves more fantastical overtones and themes. So, gotta say, this is solidly really good. All 3 of these story arcs are very self-contained. You don't really need to read one. Check out that image. You don't really need one to read all the others, but it works really well as a series, and I just massively, massively enjoyed it. And then it ends with this page here, and then we have the one-shot Awakening. Now, Awakening is a one-shot, again, written by Robert Venditti, which is just a one and done. And it's not an especially good story, to be honest. Like, it's okay. It's just about Gilead, like, hundreds of years ago, being a warrior eternally. Like, it's okay. It wasn't collected in any of the trade paperbacks, so it's a bit of a nightmare to track down as a single issue, from what I gather. I'm sure I could have done, but fortunately it's also collected here in the deluxe edition. Okay, then we have the usual gallery, which is nice, some DVD style features. Some interesting commentary on some of this, and the artwork really nice. I always love to have a bit of black and white raw artwork, inked or uninked. It's really nice to see. And so there we have it, Wrath of the Eternal Warrior. Much more fantasy and magic focused than I kind of expected, but in a really cool way, really well written. I finally provide some context for who the dying one is, and actually I really enjoyed that. I really, really did. And overall, damn good comic. Damn good comic. Definitely worth having in a deluxe edition. I can totally see why they did it like this. Much better than the other Eternal Warrior original 8-issue series we did a few weeks back, and much, much better than the Days of Steel one. So, yeah, damn good. Damn good. Highly recommended. Really enjoyed it. And, it's a one and done. Obviously, you need to know who Gilad is, but apart from the rest of it, lovely, well contained, well drawn, well paced, well written. Props. Really enjoyed this. Okay, where does that take us next? So this is the last kind of deluxe edition hardcover that has Eternal Warrior in the title at all, or really anything to do with him. I mean, arguably, like, this is set before the second deluxe edition of Unity, which I've had custom made, by the way. Have I shown you that? I don't know if I've shown you that. Are you interested? We'll see. But anyway, so there are no deluxe editions for me to naturally segue into, so I was kind of trying to work out where to go next. Now, having done a little bit of cursory research, there are a couple of miniseries which are set after this. They're not sequels to this. This ends in a very nice self-contained way, but there's a couple of miniseries set after this that I think link into the Eternal Warrior. So as a result, why the hell not? I'm going to jump into that. So the next one I'm going to read is Incursions, which is I think a 4-issue mini or a 6-issue mini. Either way, it's a miniseries that came out a couple of years after this, that also stars the Geomancer and Gilad, and that's our homework for next time. So it's going to be the series Incursions for next time. I'll catch everyone next week.
All right, thanks for watching, everybody. As always, please like, comment, subscribe. As always, please follow me on Twitter at I am Thomas Judge, where I will post a daily review of whatever comics I've been reading. You can get an idea of what I'm up to on the channel. And as always, please support the channel by heading over to Amazon.com and checking out my prose novel about superheroes. It's a completely original piece of work. The first episode in it is called Arrivals, and the series as a whole is called No Gods or Kings. You can find an excerpt of that on my website, nogodsorkings.com. Until next time, everybody, stay classy.